This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 1044, recorded on Wednesday, January 21st, 2026. Why tilt at windmills? Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we will fill your heads with wind turbines, T-Rex, and mosquitoes, maybe some shingles. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer! When the weather is bitter, how do you find a glimmer of warmth, goodwill, or joy? Do you curl up indoors, find new places to explore, resist hostile occupation, celebrate Congress funding science in this great nation, witness illegal kidnappings with neighbors, sings protest songs of the day, scroll for baby animal dopamine hits? Or do you check out This Week in Science? Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. I'm Dr. Kiki, and Blair is sick tonight. I am back again for our weekly 8 p.m. Pacific time exploration of the week in science. I have news stories this week about acetaminophen fighting aging with vaccines, some bloody Mossies, and maybe some delayed T-Rex action. And additionally, we have an interview this evening related to offshore wind turbines. Now, let me let you know what's going on. Additionally, Blair told me to save the monkey stories for next week. I think I'm going to have to talk about the tool-using cow, though, while she's not here. I don't know. Victoria is now my favorite animal on the internet. As we jump into the show here, I want to remind you that subscribing to TWIS as a podcast, wherever you find your podcasts, will allow you to get TWIS weekly when we upload the audio of the show. Otherwise, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch as a video stream or the recorded weekly videos. Look for This Week in Science, This Week in Science TWIS podcast, or visit twis.org, TWIS.org, our website for more information. But now it's time for the science, and I'm going to bring in our guest for the week. We are joined tonight with our guest, Dr. Clare Fieseler, a scientist and journalist whose work focuses on people coping with a changing ocean and a warming world. Recently, Claire has been doing a series of reports on offshore wind turbines for, as I'm reading the notes, Canary Media. Claire is
You got it.
I got it. Yes, Claire is a recipient of the Eric and Wendy Schmidt Award for Excellence in Science Communication, a National Geographic explorer, and also does research through the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. You can find Claire's work in National Geographic, NPR, Vox Grist, The Washington Post, Politico, and Canary Media. Welcome to the show, Claire.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah, so background for everybody who is watching. I came across you and your work specifically because of something we have in common, which is the AAAS Mass Media Fellowship.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're because of the fellowship, we are in a Slack together. And Claire mentioned that you mentioned that you'd been working on a story related to somebody involved in wind turbines, and I was or wind energy generation. And I was immediately interested because we've been following energy and sustainable energy and the development of not just opposition to, but the actual development of offshore wind for the last couple of decades, because it is a big deal. So how did you get into wind? I mean, climate, ocean, wind.
Like
but I mean,
going back,
I'm sure you've got your particular story. Yeah.
So I grew up in New Jersey, and like all great people do. And one of my earliest memories is as a young kid. I was probably about 4 years old, and remember we couldn't go to the beach. Most of my family lives on the Jersey Shore, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, and we couldn't go to the beach because there was syringes, and this was known as like the syringe tide. You can it has its own Wikipedia page. It was this time in the 80s where there's just medical waste washing up on the beaches of New Jersey. And this is one of my earliest memories, right? Fast forward about 15 years later, the exact same beach, and I'm an ocean lifeguard at the time, and I am paddling in the morning next to dolphins. The water is clear, the humpbacks have returned, and it's truly a story of environmental comeback. And I feel like there are so few of those stories of environmental comeback. But I got to witness one up close growing up. And so I was always really interested in the environment, and also I've always felt the pull of the ocean and having grown up near it. And so I went and got my PhD, and I was in academia for like 12 years. And it was the AAAS Mass Media Fellowship, the one that you did, that kind of pulled me from science into science journalism. And I've basically been doing it full time ever since. So that's kind of my background. And so I kind of, of course I dabble in all sorts of different things. I love science broadly. I find it fascinating, but given my druthers, I love focusing on the ocean and the climate and climate change. And this story that, I'm excited to talk to you about, which took me 3 years to report. It kind of brought those things together for me. So
I think that's one of the things also that when you read an article, you have no idea what time and effort went into the actual presentation of the article. So 3 years to find this article, and it's a great article. Honestly, I really appreciate it. And we'll get to it now that we've teased it quite a bit. But I thought it was so fascinating also, you going from studying animals, studying corals, studying the stuff in the water, and then now you're looking at people. How has that change been for you? Is it the same? Was it a shift?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I also studied people too when I was getting my PhD. So I have a PhD in interdisciplinary ecology, and I was studying at the time the policies people were putting in place to protect coral reefs. And so a lot of that was both social science and natural science. Yeah. So people have always been in the mix for me. People are endlessly fascinating. So, and this,
I agree.
And this person that I profiled for 3 years, he was one of the most fascinating people I had ever met. And he hadn't talked to basically any other reporters. And so being able to talk to him and he was tremendously influential in offshore wind opposition and pushing back and trying to stop these wind farms from being built. But no one was interviewing him, or no one was trying to. And I don't know why he took an interest in me, but he did. And we developed a real friendship, actually. He after I wrote the story, he responded, thanks for a balanced story. Here are a couple critiques. Yeah. But all in all, I thought it was well written. I hope we can still remain friends, and I think we are.
Amazing.
But yeah, it's one of these stories that I'm so glad I get to talk to you about it, because people read about things in the news like, oh, Trump hates wind farms, but there's this whole other network and stories and narratives behind that are really interesting that people should know about. So
stories that go back like as long as people have been trying to place wind farms and to create them here in the United States. So to set the stage for everyone, this last December was a particularly fraught time for the offshore wind industry. And mid-December, the U.S. government sent basically cease and desist letters to all of the developments that are underway in the United States. Can you give us a little bit of background and as to why did the U.S. government, not just Trump doesn't like windmills, but why all of a sudden go on this cease and desist vendetta against what is potentially a helpful form of sustainable energy?
That's a great question. And I will say we should not downplay Trump dislikes windmills, because that is a really large part of this. As we know, Donald Trump likes to hold grudges. And an important piece of information that listeners and viewers should know is that Trump, before he was president, when he was, just a, real estate mogul, he has a couple golf courses, right? And he's got a golf course in Scotland. And Scotland actually is one of the leaders in offshore wind farms. At any given time at nighttime, I think like half the country is running on offshore wind power, which is just incredible. Like running half your country off of wind power is insane.
And do you have, for perspective, do you have an idea of like how big Scotland would be versus like one of our states? Would that be like?
It's really hard because
is that something that we could do?
Using like different amounts, like their grids are set up differently. You're using different amounts of energy.
Yeah.
But I will say that we're nowhere close to that. I think California during like really sunny times is like producing more solar energy and it has to like burn some off, and so that's only like
don't even have enough storage,
right,
for all of the energy.
Exactly. So that's something that's comparable. But Trump in Scotland. So there's a company called Vanderfall, and they wanted to build, like they were they're Norwegian, they're Scandinavian, and they wanted to build they had permits to build an offshore wind farm right near Donald Trump's golf course, and he thought it was going to be an eyesore. A lot of people don't like looking at them. I've seen them up close. I actually think they're like spectacularly, they're actually quite beautiful. But he didn't want them ruining the view of his golf course, and he fought to stop these 4 windmills from being built, or maybe it was 11. And they are built right next to the golf course, unlike in the United States where you build them like 25 miles off in the horizon. You can barely see them on the horizon because of the way the continental shelf is. In Scotland, they build them really close to the coast. And so they're really close, within like a mile or two.
And there's going to be a noise like the hum. No,
they are so quiet. They're quiet, like they're quieter than a car. They're quieter than like a pickup truck driving down the street for sure.
That's amazing.
They are so like eerily quiet when you get up close to them. Frankly, actually, it's just offshore near a turbine in Virginia recently, and eerily quiet. Like you can just hear, all you hear is the gulls, when you're out bobbing in a boat next to them.
Or playing golf in Scotland. Yeah.
Right. And so you can't hear them, you're just seeing them. And and Trump lost this legal fight. And not only did he lose the fight, and the windmills ultimately got built next to his golf course, but he had to pay the legal fees of the Scottish government. And
because he lost. Yeah.
Because he lost. Yeah. And he ended up tweeting about this like 60 times, in a row over like the course of a couple months. Like this is the only thing he tweeted about for months.
I remember. Yeah.
It was a lot. This is like 2015. And so he has just held this grudge, and he will not let it go. And he kind of made it a campaign promise that he would build no new wind farms. And he's trying everything in his power, I believe, to make it happen. So that element of these, federal attacks should not be downplayed at all.
But there's other opposition. Like there are stories, that have come out, like people in communities.
Yes.
I don't want to look at them. And, so
Yes.
off Martha's Vineyards, that is like one that has been just so hard for years and years and years to get placed, even though it's far away. And of course, that's people with the houses and property value and trying, but with these ideas. And that's one perspective. But then there are other obstructive kind of stories that come about. And you have these groups that have in neighborhoods, local clubs that have popped up.
Yeah. Yes.
Wind.
So people have always been against these. They don't like the way they look. They think it's going to decrease property values. There's a lot of misinformation that, they'll kill birds, they'll kill whales. People also don't like change, right? And so there has been resistance to these. Now, there has also been bipartisan support. So I think we need to realize that over the course of time, the past 20 years, yes, there have been opposition by coastal members, and, cultural organizations, fishermen, but there's also been tremendous support too. So I'd say it's been like 50-50. But I think what started to change a couple of years ago is that the political right started really organizing, and it went from like local communities, like a local commerce group or a local fishermen's group, and now it's a fossil fuel funded, effort to oppose these, and they're sharing tips and tricks, and they're organizing across. And so that's what started to tip the scales, and to spread information even further. And so it went from kind of like a traditional, we don't want this new bridge or pipeline, to something, in another stratosphere, frankly.
And so it's gone from something that was simply maybe local and regional politics and preferences into something that is a much more layered and biased, situation where we have actually federal government, corporate interests, and private money that are coming into play.
Yeah.
And
so one thing I want to say for like the science interested people here is like the reason why offshore wind farms are like really great is because like in the winter, the wind is blowing a lot, and it's blowing at nighttime, which is like the time of day when the solar panels aren't activating. And also, if you've ever been like in we're having a giant winter weather storm coming through the Northeast right now. Yeah. Gas plants fail all the time in extreme winter weather. Well, guess what doesn't? Windmills. Sorry, wind turbines.
Wind turbines, yes.
Windmills like mill grain, and wind turbines produce power, but Trump's like his like windmill words have like penetrated into my brain.
I think they've penetrated a lot of people's brains.
Yes, I know.
It's the way that words are used in popular culture and more often. And suddenly we're calling chat bots that have very limited information artificial intelligence, right?
Right. Right.
So,
but like from like an engineering perspective, like these things are great, and that's why like power grid operators love them, because they perform well when other, like if you're truly an all of the above kind of like energy person, but like windmills do things that gas plants and solar just can't. But
why offshore versus on land? Because I know, I grew up, I'm on the West Coast. I grew up in California near the Bay Area, where there's the Altamont Pass, and there's just beautiful, the hills, and you've got these wind turbines that just go off into the distance, and it's just visually striking, and it create so much power.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
but why go offshore?
Well, I'll never forget when, like, the first time I went to California, which was like when I was an adult, and I was like, "What is this place?" Like, I had spent almost my entire life on the East Coast,
Yeah.
where everything is so cramped, right? Like,
Mhm.
development is New Jersey is the most densely populated state in America. I mean, you go out west and you have these you have a lot of space,
Yeah.
frankly, and a lot of federal land. You could put windmills on.
Mhm.
We don't have that on the East Coast,
Hmm.
right? But we have this really wide, shallow continental slope that basically is like 100 feet deep from like the shore out almost to 200 miles. In California, like, it drops off deep really quickly, and it's actually really hard to build wind turbines out there. That's why the ones that they want to build in California are going to be floating turbines, which is really
Yeah.
interesting technology we can talk about.
Yeah.
And so on the East Coast, we're really limited on space. These are big pieces of infrastructure, and where are you going to put them? We
Mhm.
have some of the windiest, blusteriest, offshore areas, and it's very shallow, and it's one of the perfect places in the world, actually, for offshore wind.
So, on that note, perfect placement. It's great. Everything sounds awesome. It sounds like, how could
And you can build
wind.
them very quickly. You can build them very
Yeah.
quickly.
So, enter David Stevenson, the main character of
Mhm.
your article, you spent 3 years writing and talking to and learning about. Why was he opposed? What happened?
So David Stevenson is he's in his 70s. He lives in Delaware. He's lived in Delaware almost his entire life, and he is a self-described conservationist, lifelong conservationist. And when I went to his house to visit him, he's got solar panels on his roof. He drives a hybrid car, and he has biked across the country. He loves it outdoors. But he also kind of has like a libertarian streak to him. He thinks that the government, he really is I guess, like, fiscally conservative. He wants the government kind of out of your business. And so that's, I think, has played a role in his political beliefs. But I think one of the main things is that, very much like Trump, a offshore wind plan or blueprint kind of came to his doorstep. He lives very close to the beach in Delaware. He did not want, and him and his community did not want that for many reasons. He thought it would ruin the view, and they started to
Right.
fight it. And they were actually successful. They were really successful. Him and like this group of neighbors were really successful in delaying the building of an offshore wind farm in their community. And after that success, he was kind of like, I wonder if I could take these tips and lessons and export them to other places for other communities. And he just started cold calling other groups that he read about in the newspapers or like saw on Facebook. And it was like, here, I can help you. You're not a 501c3 yet. Let me help you set it up. Let me help you set up your legal funds. Let me provide you some legal funds to sue some of these companies. Let me help you, create mail-in flyers. Like, at one point he had used like those, there's a really popular in New Jersey and Delaware, like it's almost like an advertisement attached to the back of like a low flying plane. And it advertises for like let's create advertisements.
It's one of those things where it's like, somebody, will you marry me over a basketball, a baseball
or like,
game?
Come to DJ Wow's foam party tonight at the beach,
Mhm.
party. And so like he had all these like tips, and they would and he also was bringing. He worked at a think tank, a fossil fuel backed think tank, and so he had funds and influence, and he started bringing it to these people that were otherwise just kind of community members with yard signs.
It just seems so counter to everything else about him? Why? Okay, it's your own community. You didn't want it. You stopped it from happening, but why get so invested in this entire process of blockading and stopping stuff in other communities? Why go that far?
Yeah, and a lot of people didn't take the time to ask ask people, because it's not as simple, I think, often as we like to think. And one of the things I try to avoid as a journalist is to avoid oversimplification and to avoid tropes and to avoid villainizing people. No matter what you think they might have done, they all have their reasons, right? They all have their values. And ultimately, even though he was a conservationist, he was just really dead set he thought nuclear power was the future. And it is carbon free. Now, it does have a toxic waste problem, right? And it's expensive to build. But he was like, this is what makes the most sense financially. And that's what he wanted. But he was really bad at promoting nuclear power, and he was really good at crushing offshore wind.
That is wild. Yeah. I'm nuclear power plants take 30 to 50 years to get approved, permit, build, bring online.
10 to 15, yes.
But it can take a very long time to make a nuclear plant work. There's the nuclear waste issue, and then also the question of why put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
So
yeah,
these are very interesting questions for somebody who seems thoughtful and intelligent and is doing what he thought was best.
Yeah. He's a really smart guy, and he really believes that what he's doing is right. But the one other thing I want to say about his journey, which I describe in the article, is when I met him, he actually invited me to a climate change conference in Orlando, and that was and I describe it in the article. When climate change conference, it's almost like that title is ironic, because it was a summit for people who don't believe in climate change. Right. And it was like all the classic climate deniers that you've ever heard about were there. And it
wasn't the American Geophysical Union.
No, it was the Heartland Institute's climate conference, where they go to debunk climate change. Yeah. And Stevenson turns to me at one point, kind of whispers, cheekily, he's like, I might be the only person here who believes in climate change. And I was like, well, what are you doing here then? Yeah. And he was willing to kind of compromise some of those values for these other things, these other goals he had, which was nuclear. And he didn't believe a lot of the misinformation that his groups and network put forth at the beginning when I met him, about wind power killing whales, right? He actually didn't believe it at all. He was like, the jury's still out. We need to find the evidence. But he was stunned to know that kind of soundbite, wind power is killing whales, was getting a lot of attention from Fox News. Even traditional news outlets like the Associated Press were kind of picking it up and trying to assess its validity. And for years he had toiled kind of on the margins of this campaign, and no one, even people in the mainstream Republican Party, were paying attention to him. But then once the wind and whales narrative started to grow and metastasize, people were really paying attention. And so when I first met him, he kind of was just like, oh, wow, I don't support this narrative, but I'm not going to shut it down because it's bringing people to the conversation. Yeah. And then I talked to him many times over 3 years. And by the end, he was really embracing it. He had come to embrace this thing that he at one point really kind of saw as a false claim. And it just, I think, goes to show, he's not alone. He's part of this larger embrace of conspiratorial thinking that's kind of taken hold of our country. And so it was really interesting to follow his journey through that, yeah, kind of even to the end. So
Did your conversations and the way that you interacted around those facts, about those points that were being used for marketing, did they change over the years?
they did, yeah, because I think at the beginning he had a belief that that federal scientists would come to would gather, take the time, gather the data, come to a conclusion. And he lost trust in that process. He lost trust in government. Um, and then started turning to other scientists. Like he sent me like a report by like a computer scientist. I was like, this is not a whale specialist, right? And so yeah, I think trust is a big issue. When you no longer trust the experts, where do you go for information? And I think a lot of people have wrestled with that over the years. And we all have people in our family who have lost trust in experts, whether it's from COVID-19 or people in your community asking questions about vaccines, don't know where to get their information from. This is this larger problem we have with trust in science and trust in experts. And I saw it with him. And it was just so interesting to see kind of from this, we talk about vaccines, we talk about climate change, but like this kind of like particular clean energy angle was so interesting and unique. And I found it endlessly fascinating.
So he's moved into nuclear now, and he's not working in offshore wind.
Yeah, he left it behind.
And so do you think in leaving it behind, he's also able to go, okay, I'm going to put those ideas and that community behind me, and now I'm focusing on nuclear?
Yeah.
And, like now he can like open up his mind again to
I think
scientific
he's returning
ideas,
to the scientific ideas that he's always wanted. I think the whole anti-offshore wind movement got away from him a little bit, Yeah. It took on a life of its own, and it was really fueled by President Trump's rhetoric. And I think he was happy to kind of close the door on it, frankly. Yeah. And I wish him the best. And, there is a place for nuclear, just like.
And if he can figure out how his like opposition to wind, if he can figure out how to turn that around on nuclear, go do it. Yes.
I know. Yeah. I mean, small modular nuclear reactors, there is a place for them, just like there's a place for geothermal, just like there's a place for solar. We need all of these. We need all of these solutions, basically. But I think that the outcome of his campaign mixed with Donald Trump's rise to power has been a total crushing of the offshore wind sector. Yeah. And I don't know how it comes back within the next 10 years.
Yeah. And so that was the next question. The title of the article is a bit hyperbolic, maybe. I don't know. The man behind the fall of offshore wind. Is offshore wind dead? Do you see it coming back? Is it just slowed down?
So I wrote another article right after I published the piece about David Stevenson, and it was how Trump dismantled a promising industry and what America lost. And it was kind of my swan song for covering this beat. I covered only offshore wind basically for an entire year. And yeah, that's the article right there. And I really urge you to, if people have been like, oh, I didn't know anything about offshore wind, and now I want to know more, read this article. And it's kind of an analysis of everything that's happened over the past year with Trump's political assault on it, and kind of what states who were really banking on offshore wind, what they've lost. And truly, because these projects rely on investment, a lot of banks don't want to invest in them because, Trump's unpredictability makes it not a sound investment. And
yeah, that is just a commonality across a lot of sectors right now.
Yeah. And so in speaking to like these energy analysts that they this is what they do. They look at the market. They're like, there's just no way we're going to see investor trust return to this market until Donald Trump has left the presidency. And even then it's going to take time to return. So they predict no new wind farms will be built in America until 2035. So that's 10 years.
That's
So the only
new wind farms being
new
built.
wind farms,
However,
yeah.
there are a large number that were already underway, and there were some that were basically completed, getting ready to be started. You said you were in Virginia at the wind farm there. It's minimal, but are those going to be allowed to get started again? Is the cessation going to be like this, the ceasing of action that was ordered? Is it going to continue, or?
So when Trump came into office, there was only one large-scale offshore wind farm operating in America. And even though things had been in the works for 20 years, it was really like Trump came in just as this industry was taking off. There were a dozen that had been approved and were about to take off, and 40 leases that had already been purchased. So we can imagine like up to 40 offshore wind farms could have been built in the next 15 years.
Which would be so amazing.
Which would be incredible. And the ones that are essentially currently underway, there's 5. And I think it's, if you put them together, they would produce enough power to power all of Manhattan. And which is a lot. I mean, like there's like 6 million people that live in Manhattan, right? And so
but we're still looking gigawatts instead of terawatts.
Yes, we're still looking at gigawatts. Yeah. But also like tens and thousands of jobs too. Yeah. And so there's 5 of them, and one's in Virginia, and the rest are one is in New York, and the rest are in New England. And those were paused by Trump on like December 20th. They got this, like as you mentioned, this kind of cease and desist, and all of them I think sued. And within the past week, 3 federal judges have lifted the order. This is the article I wrote about the
cease and desist.
The cease and desist, essentially the stop work orders. And since I wrote this article, it came out a couple of days before Christmas. It's now January 21st. 3 of those wind farms have been allowed, who have gotten temporary injunctions. Essentially, they can go forward as these lawsuits move through the courts. And so one is very close to being completed, Revolution Wind, and it might be completed before the suit gets done. So we might get these 5 wind farms built in the next 3 years. We might not. I can see some of these companies abandoning these projects halfway completed because of the tremendous cost, which is really, really hard for. These are 2 workers that I met in Virginia, by the way. There's been entire workforces that have been trained to build these things, right? Entire supply chains have been built within the country to serve these projects,
to build up this capacity.
And those will all kind of wither away. Now Canada is launching their first offshore wind farms, and they kind of want to make use of that workforce, and they want to make use of that supply chain, and that's going to be really interesting. And they actually want to service some of that power, because they already service hydropower. They sell it to us, and so maybe they could sell us some of the wind power we never built. So that's something I'm like tracking in the coming years. Canada perhaps taking up the baton on this, but it's a really interesting story of like this huge engineering, accomplishment that we had made. I mean, each of these turbines are as tall as the Hoover Dam. And there's 176 that were about to be built off the coast of Virginia. Now they won't be. And, or now they may be, they won't be, who knows?
It's up in the air.
It's up in the air. I know it's just one of the many things that the Trump administration has ground to a halt that we're progressing in America. But people should care about it. People should care about it because renewable energy creates jobs, cleans the air, lowers emissions, and is more reliable.
Yeah.
And those are things that we all want, so
Yeah, a better environment, a better energy future for ourselves and our future generations. Yeah, there is so much there. I think I agree. People should care. And thank you so much for joining me tonight. I know you're on the East Coast, and so it's late where you are. I'm keeping you up late with this interesting topic. Is there anything you want to quickly, if there is anything you haven't talked about that you want to share with the audience before you go?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm really active on Blue Sky, and you can find me on Blue Sky. My last name Fieseler, Fieseler, on Blue Sky. And I'm writing a book about ocean industries and penetrating deeper into our ocean and farther into our ocean, much farther than just offshore wind. And so look for that. But yeah, I love nerding out about science and science topics and the environment. So always happy to connect with readers. And if you read my story and you like it, please reach out and tell me. And then I can send that to our funders, and because this was all funded by philanthropic organizations that believe in environmental journalism and journalists. So it's good to
and investigative journalism that's long-term, and you're doing some deep work. It's essential because we don't get these stories otherwise. All of the stories that we brought up tonight, I will link to on the TWIS website in our show notes. And I look forward to seeing your book when it comes out, and hopefully getting you back on the show to talk some more.
Wouldn't that be great? Can I come back?
Yes, please.
All right. Let's set 2.5 years from
all right.
Today.
I'm setting
put on the calendar.
Setting my clock, setting an alarm. Yeah. Everyone, Clare Fieseler, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for
Have
having
a
me.
wonderful evening. Get a good night's sleep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Be well.
Take care.
Good night. Hey, everybody. So we are going to keep going because I do have a bunch of stories for you. Not a lot, because we did have the interview and I was saving room for Blair to have some stories also. So I've got a few stories for you, but right now in this very moment, let me just say thank you very much for joining me here for This Week in Science. If you enjoyed this interview, if you enjoy the stories that we bring every week, please head over to TWIS.org and consider becoming a part of the Patreon community. Consider looking at some of those Zazzle products in our store for some of our merchandise that can help support the show and promote the show to people who don't know about it. What's that? Where's that picture? What's TWIS? And you can tell everybody all about it. It's so great. It's your support that really keeps this show going. We are supported by you, the listeners. So thank you for your support. I really can't do it without you. TWIS.org. That's where you go. All right. Coming on in. I just got a buzz on my phone. Did somebody send me a text message? Yeah, I think they did. But dun, dun, dun. It's not anything that I need to worry about in this moment, right here, right now. It's not like a syringe tide that I need to be running away from. And I am actually going to read that Wikipedia entry. Wikipedia is another great one to support if you are looking for places to help out. Wikipedia is still one of the best community-driven informational sites on the internet. It is honestly one of the best things on the internet. There's still good stuff on the internet, and Wikipedia is part of it. It's amazing. But this is This Week in Science. Here are my stories. Are you ready for me to run through them? I hope so. Okay. New news out this week, published in The Lancet, I believe. Yes, The Lancet, Obstetrics, Gynecology, and Women's Health. European researchers have completed a new gold standard science review of paracetamol use in pregnancy and its relation to autism, ADHD, and mental dysfunction. The paper reviewed 43 studies exploring associations between paracetamol use during pregnancy, along with neurodevelopmental disorders, like were just mentioned. Only cohort studies with clearly defined outcomes and adjusted risk estimates were included, while studies reporting only unadjusted results were excluded. Last summer, our president and the appointed health czar, who is not a doctor, JFK Jr., RFK Jr., sorry, wrong name person, RFK Jr., reported and put out a government statement that use of acetaminophen, Tylenol during pregnancy is bad and you shouldn't do it. And they based it on a review study that found some potential connections, but it wasn't concrete and it wasn't absolute. And additionally, it disregarded current well supported evidence for medical professionals that support the use of discerned, thoughtful use of paracetamol during pregnancy for very specific uses for short periods of time. And this is one of the only things that is possible to be used during pregnancy to deal with pain and inflammation. That said, the instructions from our government were to stay, from the United States government, were to stay away from Tylenol when you're pregnant. Just don't do it. Anyway, this study has come out, and the researchers report there is no connection, absolutely no connection, even using robust sibling analyses. No connection, no sufficient statistical power, no significance related to paracetamol use during pregnancy and any of the neurodevelopmental traits that had been considered, ASD, ADHD, and others. Sibling comparison studies revealed no risk. This persisted as null when only low bias studies were analyzed. So even low bias, still no risk. When only studies with more than 5 years of longitudinal data or only studies with adjusted risk elements estimates were analyzed, no associations were found. Some observational analyses showed small elevations in risk. These were heterogeneous, attenuated, and more robust analyses, suggesting that there's residual confounding. And so what the researchers suggest is that it's not necessarily the paracetamol itself that is causing the problem. There are underlying health issues that are likely to be underreported or unconsidered in many of these studies that are only looking for very specific outcomes. And so what we may be seeing is the why. Why is a person who's pregnant needing to take Tylenol? Why? And if they're if they're not just taking it once for a headache or once for a cold or a fever, but they're taking it for a long period of time, why is that? And how is that reason? How does that tie into the health of the mother, the health of the child, and not specifically just the use of the paracetamol itself? Anyway, yeah. Gold standard science. I love that the researchers in their report, they actually spoke to many of the points that were brought up in the previous study that was used this summer, and in the reports and announcements that were made to call back and to basically slap back a little bit. with respect to how the science was done, what science was looked at, and what the results said. So, amazing study out in the Lancet. No connection based on the largest, most complete analysis to date of paracetamol, acetaminophen, Tylenol, etc., and pregnancy. So, anyway, we're going to keep until we get more news about that. I'm going to keep just following the reports, everybody. Haha. You're a residual confounder? Mm-hmm. Same here. I think, no, I'm just a confounding factor. No doubt about it. What about aging? We all want to age better. There is a study out this last week by researchers at the University of Southern California, Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. Researchers looked at the impacts of the shingles vaccine, the herpes zoster shingles vaccine, on biological aging in older adults. And this fascinating study found that the vaccine impacts epigenetic changes, it impacts inflammation, it leads to the exhibition of signs of slower biological aging. And so people tend to get shingles if they have had chickenpox infection and sickness in their earlier youth. The chickenpox, the herpes zoster, gets into your cells, and it sits in there and it just waits. And so there's some suggestion that, similar to that, maybe how Epstein-Barr can lead to multiple sclerosis, it's kind of like your body starts aging, you have inflammation, and the more inflammation there is, the higher likelihood that virus that's been hiding in your cells forever is suddenly going to go blah and explode out. And when it does, it causes shingles, which are very painful, make people very unhappy, and you're not healthy when it's happening, because there's just a lot going on that contributes to the expression of that virus as shingles. Going back to say, the shingles vaccine, they looked at 7 different individual markers of biological aging: inflammation, innate and adaptive immunity, immune function, cardiovascular function, neurodegeneration, epigenetic and transcriptomic aging, and also composite biological aging. And across the board, it all was reduced versus people who did not receive the shingles vaccine. Quote, the epigenetic, transcriptomic, and overall composite biological aging improvements were most pronounced within 3 years post-vaccination, with slower aging persisting beyond this window. The results support the hypothesis that shingles vaccination may influence key biological systems relevant to aging. So potentially, by getting the shingles vaccine, you reduce background inflammation. Something, bam, bam, bam. I'm going to put that one on my calendar and make sure I get that shingles vaccine, because I did have chickenpox as a child, and I don't know. I'm gonna try to slow that aging roller coaster down just a little bit. If there's any possibility, I'm going to go there. So, as we all age, maybe this is something interesting, especially for those of us who go, man, I don't know if I really need a vaccine at this point in my life. What do I want? What do I not want? Maybe consider the vaccine, if not just to not get shingles, but for all the other benefits it could potentially offer to you. That said, it is a study that just looks across different individuals, 3,884 adults aged 70 years and older in the year 2016. So just a single cross section of people. So further work may want to look at down the line aging and, how things actually play out over time. But similar to what I also find very interesting is that similar to the HPV vaccine that they're now offering to children, the shingles vaccine, if this plays out, it may be suggestive of a much larger benefit to health that vaccines could play. That by interacting with our immune system in a non-destructive way, that the vaccines could actually do what used to happen by the fact that we didn't have anything and we were dirty and we had pinworms and all sorts of stuff. So that our immune systems now in modern society have a tendency to be revving a little bit more than they need to because we're too clean. But imagine if, because we're vaccinating, that vaccinations are actually helping our immune system keep the house in order better, reducing inflammation, helping to maintain our brain health, helping to maintain healthier aging over time. So I'm going to pay attention to see if there are more stories along this trajectory of thought, because I think it could potentially be a very interesting outcome, that vaccines, not just when you're young, but when you're older, getting boosters, getting new vaccines, that vaccines could help us live healthier and better lives. I mean, they do, but like even healthier and better than we knew. Another study out in Frontiers in Ecology and Evolution this week, researchers have been looking at mosquitoes in Brazil. Researcher Geronimo Alencar at Oswaldo Cruz Institute in Rio de Janeiro has been taking a look at mosquitoes in the remnants of the Atlantic forest, because the Atlantic forest in Brazil, there is a large amount of the forest that has deteriorated because of human encroachment. The land use changes, so there's less forest and fewer animals for the mosquitoes to feed on, less habitat for the mosquitoes within the forest as well. But there's more people nearby. And so the researchers, they basically went out, trapped mosquitoes, and then tested the blood of the swollen, engorged female mosquitoes to see what they were eating. They used DNA extraction to sequence genes for biological barcoding to be able to figure out what species blood was present in the stomachs of these female mosquitoes to find out who'd been bitten. They collected 1,714 mosquitoes from 52 different species. So not just Aedes aegypti, or 52 different species of mosquitoes. So across the board, lots. Only 145 females were found to be carrying blood. So that really diminishes their sample size. And they were able to identify only the blood meals of 24 out of the 154 females. Those meals came from 18 humans, 1 amphibian, 6 birds, 1 canid, and 1 mouse. Some of those mosquitoes had eaten of multiple victims. This Venezuelensis had an amphibian and a human prey. Mosquitoes from fasciolata showed mixed meals involving rodents and bird and human. But the question here is whether deforestation, encroachment of humans, and the changing world of available prey for mosquitoes is leading to mosquitoes seeking different options. Are they seeking out alternative blood sources? And are they feeding on humans out of convenience or out of preference? This is a big question as well, because mosquitoes, we know, are huge carriers, vectors for disease. And so as climate changes, as habitat is destructed, and as mosquitoes move all over the place, Are they going to be like, the human eating tigers, right? The Bengal tigers that get a taste for humans. Um, the stories of great white sharks that only want to eat the human blood. Um, is that something? Are there adaptations within the mosquitoes that will lead them to not just choose humans because humans are nearby more often, but actually because they want easier, or they find human blood more attractive. We do know that mosquitoes also are attracted to carbon dioxide emission, and different species emit different amounts of carbon dioxide. Humans were so good at it. And so even though there's a lot of data missing, there's no way to get a real complete view of whether or not mosquitoes in Brazil are getting a taste for human blood. But there is an indication that we need to look at this more over time. We need to look at it in different areas and more broadly within this area to understand what the mosquitoes are eating, what different species of mosquitoes are focusing on for their prey species, and why. I mean, the last thing I want is for mosquitoes to just suddenly be like, meh, other animals, never mind. I only want the humans. I only have a taste for the humans. But it is the mixed blood meals that are the ones of specific concern, because the mixed blood meals are the ones that will tend to allow for the spread of disease, where a virus can be picked up or a parasite can be picked up in one prey species and then transferred to another in another feeding session. But yes. Oh, the mosquitoes. Forest loss is driving mosquitoes to eat more humans. Well, duh, right? And then they're all in your pools of water. Make sure before spring comes, you dump out all that standing water, everybody. All right, last story for the night is a T-Rex story. There was a study a while back that I reported on where a researcher was able to differentiate a couple of fossils and find that one fossil that was thought to be a juvenile T-Rex is a completely different species. They're calling Nanotyrannus. This study is just published in Peer J this last week. The researchers have looked at 17 Tyrannosaurus T-Rex individuals and looked at growth rings in the leg bones of the fossils. So apparently, like trees, for a period of growth annually, the T-Rex, it has annual growth rings, very similar to to trees. And so they could look at these growth rings and get an idea about the age of the T-Rex. However, this study actually determined that there's an issue where very often the researchers don't actually, not the researchers, the T-Rexes don't get to full size until much, much older, and that there is growth after the period of tree rings in their legs, that leads to that fully adult size that we can see in some older adult T-Rexes, and that T-Rex may reach its maximum size by 40 years old. And so this is a suggestion that it might, instead of peaking at 30 years old, that the T-Rex would be like, yeah, I'm old and I'm going to die at 30. Instead, it actually would take 35 to 40 years to reach full size and maturity, which is wild. I mean, I'm 50-ish, somewhere around there, and I still haven't reached my full maturity. I hope I've reached my full size, but that's enough. It's enough. The studies looked at bone microtissue structure. They looked at these growth rings. They looked at all the different samples. They found that the growth actually changes more variably than was expected. But yeah, it's pretty interesting because we have these ideas of like, okay, little T-Rex grows to big T-Rex. How long is that going to take? Apparently, it takes a lot longer than we once thought. And these T-Rexes, man, T-Rexes are so cool too because they were just massive individuals, which is, I think, one of the, most fascinating things that we feel, right? Can you imagine being around such a large animal who had the potential to be violent or dangerous? How long did it take to get to be the big adult individual? And we're getting a better idea of that now. But yeah, I think it's really neat. You can look at these bone segments, these slides, these sections that were taken of the cross section of the bones, and it really is. There are rings that can be identified and regular structures within the bones to be able to see how they grew over time, which is cool. But, we're going to find out, just like dendrochronology, that people are skeptical of how fast they grew or how much we can really, really conclude from the tree rings in a T-Rex leg. It's now called a tree Rex. Very nice, Kevin Reardon. That's pretty funny. All right, everybody. I've done it for the night. I've completed my stories. That's all I've got for you for this evening. I'm sorry I don't have more stories. There were more, but Blair's not here to report on them, so I'm not going to go on without her and report. Oh, no, I almost forgot to tell you about Veronica the cow. Veronica the cow is now my favorite bovine on the planet. Okay. Beautiful. I didn't know that cows like this existed in the world. But apparently beautiful.
This is Veronica.
Beautiful gray.
Veronica is a Swiss brown bee cow.
Brown bee
And
cow.
Veronica
I want it.
uses
I want one. Veronica uses tools. Veronica likes brooms. She likes sticks. She scratches herself with the end of the stick in certain places. She uses the brush end of the stick on other places. She is gorgeous. She's in Austria. And if this is the kind of cows in Austria, I think I need to move there to have a cow like Veronica. Veronica was studied. Researchers took a look to see whether or not she was actually goal-oriented and what happened in her use of the broom, the stick. And they did determine that, yes, she liked the brushy, stiff bristles on her back. She liked the stick end of a push broom for her belly, for the softer areas. And she would use the broom or the stick end in very specific ways to brush herself or to move the flies along. And smart Veronica is just absolutely wonderful. I am in love with beautiful Veronica. And this is not something, I mean, Blair and I have talked about the intelligence of cows and their social nature and so many amazing aspects of cows. They are smart. I've never not thought they were smart. I never thought they were tool users, though, which gives it another level of complexity. Is it only this cow? Or is it the Bronve cows? Or is it all cows? This is what we need to understand. If given a push broom, how many cows will learn? And if you have more cows in a pasture, will other cows learn to use the broom? Anyway, I'm in love this I'm honestly in love with Victoria. I think Victoria is the most beautiful cow in the world. And I'm now I'm gonna subscribe to Veronica on social media. I don't know if she's on social media yet, but I'm going to find her. She's beautiful. I love her. And her owner is absolutely wonderful. Are you able to hear the audio when I turn it on? Because the owner is like the cutest ever, and he's now my favorite also.
My name is Vitka.
It's
And
Vikar.
this is my very intelligent cow, Veronica. And we have some message for you. Save the nature, then you protect yourself. And nature diversity is the key to survive on this planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wagner. Oh, he's my new favorite person also. Yes. Thank you. This is what we need to hear. It's what we need to hear. Oh, all right, everybody. Tool use by Veronica in Austria. Veronica. That's how she goes. Veronica. I am done for the evening. How are you? I know I should have a cow. But the thing is, like I said, I never really wanted a cow because I grew up around the Holsteins and just the regular brown cows around in California, Central Valley, and I like them, but not like that. I like Veronica. I do. There are differences between cows. Veronica's beautiful. I don't know. I have to say. All right. It's time for me to go to bed. All of you are wonderful. This week, I hope I brought some good conversation and some good stories for you. I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Thank you for joining me for another episode of This Week in Science. Ooh, Highland cows. Those are good. I also like teacup cows. Teacup cows are just ridiculous. There are lots of cool cows out there. I should not pick and choose between them. Time for shout outs, everybody? Yes. Time for shout outs. Don't have a cow, TWIS Science. Thank you, Fada. Yes. Oh, so good. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone in the chat room. Thank you for being here, making sure the chat room is an awesome place to hang out. Gord, Arenlore, others who really take that upon themselves as moderators to be able, and Fada, to be able to manage our chat rooms across our various streams. You all are wonderful. Thank you for being a part of the show. Fada, thank you for all the work you put into social media and show notes. It's so appreciated every single week. Thank you. And Identity 4, thank you for recording the show. Rachel, thank you for editing the show. And our Patreon sponsors, thank you for supporting the show. Aaron Anathema, Adam Mishkan, Alan Viola. Whoops, I'm trying to scroll, and this overlay keeps popping in there. Alan Viola, Alan Coffin, Andrew Swanson, Artem, Arthur Kepler, Bob Calder, Bob Coles, Brendan Minish, Brian Carrington, Chris Wozniak, Christopher Dreyer, Christopher Rappin, Craig Landing, Craig Potts, Daryl Myshak, Dave Wilkinson, David Youngblood, Don Munnis, Jonathan Styles, Gay, Don Stylo, EO, Eden Mundell, Eric Knapp Flying Out, Fredis 104, G. Britton, Lattimore, George Corris, Greg Biggs, Jack, Jason Olds, John Atwood, John McKee, John Ratnaswamy, Johnny Gridley, Ken Hayes, Kent Northcote, Kevin Parachan, Kevin Reardon, Kurt Larson, Lon Makes, Lauren Gifford, Mari Gertz, Marjorie, Mark Hessenflow, Mark Jenkins, Noodles, Packard Pecoraro, Paul D. Disney, Paul Ronovich, Philip Shane, Pierre Velazab, Richard Badge, Robert Lerlin, Robert Farley, Rodney Lewis, Rudy Garcia, Remy Day, Sean Clarence Lamb, Chubu, Stephen Alberon, Steve Leisman, aka Zima Sue Doster, Teresa Smith, Tony Steele, and Vegard Shefstad. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. For those of you who are not yet supporting us on Patreon, but who may be interested in doing so, head over to twis.org, click on the Patreon link, and you can just follow the bouncing ball to join us in the Patreon community and to support us in an ongoing fashion. There are also links on the website to supporting us through PayPal if Patreon is not something that you would like to do. On next week's show, hopefully Blair will be back. She said that her little one gave her this cold this week, and that the little one seems to have gotten better in 3 days, and so hopefully she will too. But we will be back next week, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time, podcasting, broadcasting, live streaming from our Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook channels. If you want to listen to us as a podcast, head over to wherever you find podcasts and look for This Week in Science. And if you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe too. If we're not on your favorite podcast player, in your favorite podcast directory, let me know, because maybe I can get us in there, right? I mean, we're pretty much in most of them, but come on. We love your feedback also from where am I? I forgot what I was doing. For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes, links to stories, you can head over to twis.org. That's all going to be on our website. And you can sign up for our newsletter. Yes, you should do that. Sign up for the newsletter. I will send one at some point in the time. And don't you want to be on the list when I do? Yes, you do. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, or a suggestion for an interview, please let us know on one of our social media accounts or send us an email. Just put TWIS in the subject line so your email doesn't get spam filtered into oblivion. I look forward to discussing science with you again next week, and with Blair too. Hopefully she'll be back. And if you've learned anything from the show, remember, it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science. This Week